Okay, what's going on there?
She's in the basement.
Somebody call
Pulled her up. I tried to give her CPR. I pulled her off and
That call was placed on the night of September 14th, 2018, from a quiet neighborhood in Tecumseh, Michigan. The man on the phone is Jimmy Allan, 37 years old. He's telling the dispatcher he just found his wife unconscious in the basement of their home. Within minutes, officers were on the scene, and within hours, they had more questions than answers. To understand what happened inside that basement, we need to go back to the beginning of that day. Jimmy and Amy Allan had been married for roughly 15 years. They had 2 children, Ashley, their teenage daughter, and Caleb, Amy's son from a previous relationship, who by this point had already left the home. The family had relocated from Ocala, Florida, to Tecumseh, Michigan, just 1 year earlier. And by all outward appearances, the day of September 14th started like any other. Jimmy described it this way when officers came to speak with him the following morning.
Ashley had a friend over, Kayla, after school. Amy picked her up and I was just kind of in bed. And they came here, she made everybody dinner, 6:30. We rolled out to take them to the game.
So the family had dinner together, drove to Tecumseh High School to drop the girls off at a football game, and then Jimmy and Amy headed downtown. Just the 2 of them. Their first stop was Ember's Bar and Grill. Then they moved on to JR's Hometown Grill and Pub. Investigators would later pull the security footage from JR's to verify this part of the story. Everything checked out, at least at first. But at some point during the night, the mood shifted. Jimmy brought up the idea of selling the house and moving the family back to Florida. Amy wasn't interested.
She said a couple of times that, oh, that's not going to work. And she's normally positive and was sort of down and negative. And we started to disagree about it. And she's like, I hope that works out for you. And I'm like, what do you mean, me? I'm talking about our life.
I hope that works out for you. Not us. You. Jimmy said that comment was what sparked the argument. By the time they left the bar, Amy had made up her mind. She was not getting in the car with him. Surveillance footage captured her walking down the street alone, heading in the direction of their house. She arrived home at 7:58 p.m. According to Jimmy, when Amy got home, she went straight to the basement. She grabbed an extension cord. At 8:05 p.m., Jimmy went down to check on her.
She's petting Louie, one of our cats, and what the hell are you doing in the basement?
He said Amy was still angry, this time about the bar door. She felt he had slammed it in her face as they left. Jimmy insisted it was an accident. Either way, the argument picked back up. It lasted about 10 minutes before Jimmy gave up and went back upstairs. He said he put on Ace Ventura, the Jim Carrey film, and waited. About 25 minutes later, at 8:40 p.m., it was almost time to pick up Ashley from the football game. Jimmy went back downstairs one last time to try to smooth things over with Amy. What he says he found when he got to the bottom of those stairs changed everything.
And immediately do that and started, check for a pulse. When I glanced down there, I saw there looked like a upturned kitty litter pail.
Huh.
Because I'm like, like I said, it was just so,
Sure.
His account was that Amy had used the extension cord to hang herself from the basement ceiling. He said he pulled her down, laid her on the floor, and began CPR. At 8:52 p.m., he called 911. Searers arrive. Officer Ben J. Horn was the first to arrive. Despite the desperation in Jimmy's voice during the 911 call, it was eerily silent as Officer Horn approached the residence. No sounds from inside, No crying. Nothing. The moment Officer Horn announced himself,
Police department, police department.
Hello, help,
Yes.
please!
Jimmy was found in the basement, sobbing over Amy's unresponsive body, still performing CPR. The EMTs arrived and took over. Now, as officers began assessing the scene, one thing immediately stood out about Amy's physical condition.
I was definitely looking for any injuries, whether it be from a hang or otherwise, and I really didn't see any sort of the typical injuries that I normally would have seen in a hanging, so I definitely took note of that.
No significant ligature marks. One faint mark near the jugular. That was it. A hospital staff member who later treated Amy would describe this as a red flag.
No visible injuries.
No visible injuries. Is that strike you as odd?
It was a red flag.
Once the EMTs had taken over downstairs, Officer Horn brought Jimmy up to the kitchen. And this is where things start to get difficult to explain. He appeared composed walking up those stairs, and then, without any warning, no build-up, no escalation, just a sudden eruption. And then calm again. Officers had no idea what to make of it. A few minutes later, one of the EMTs came upstairs with news. Amy had a faint pulse. Pay close attention to Jimmy's reaction here. Officers in that room described his response as unexpected. Rather than relief, he appeared frustrated by the news. That moment stayed with them. Shortly after, Jimmy stepped out to make 2 phone calls. The first, to Ashley.
We had an emergency. Don't go anywhere. There's an emergency. Don't go anywhere. I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Calm, controlled. He didn't want her to panic. Then he called his mother.
Oh, I don't know what to do, Mom. I don't know what to do. Oh, this is terrible. I gotta talk to the cops.
He sounded completely broken. But the officers watching him noticed something. Despite the sobbing, there were no tears on his face. Not one. The following morning, Officer Horn and his partner returned to the Allan home. Jimmy walked them through the full timeline of the previous day, calmly, in detail. Most of it checked out, but there was one thing that kept pulling the officer's attention back. The basement ceiling was low, very low. Amy was 5 feet 6 inches tall. The ceiling stood at roughly 7 feet. For Jimmy's account to be true, for Amy to have been fully suspended by an extension cord tied to that ceiling, the geometry had to work. And investigators weren't sure it did. They collected Amy's belongings, her laptop, her cell phone, and left. Before they went, they spoke briefly with Ashley.
Were your mom and dad fighting at all yesterday that you recall?
No, but everything was normal when I left.
When you left? Okay. Is there a history of the, fighting or arguing or anything like that? Nothing ever? Okay.
Ashley said her mother had always been emotionally stable. No history of this kind of behavior. Nothing that would have indicated she was in crisis. Then, Amy's family arrived at the police department, and they had been waiting 14 hours to do so, because that's how long it took Jimmy to tell them what had happened. What Amy's relatives told investigators painted a very different picture of life inside the Allan household. According to her family, Jimmy was a controlling husband. He tracked Amy's location through her phone, texting her exact whereabouts and demanding explanations. He monitored what the family ate, watched their social media, He disciplined the children, frequently going further than he should have. And when Amy pushed back, her voice didn't count. When Amy's son Caleb turned 17, he left home to live with his grandparents. Jimmy's response was to tell Amy she was no longer allowed to speak with her own family, including her son. The last time Caleb saw his mother was at his high school graduation, 1 year before her death. On September 17th, 2018, 3 days after being found in that basement, Amy Allan was taken off life support. She was pronounced dead. This was now a homicide investigation. Investigators turned their attention to Amy's cell phone. In her text thread with Jimmy, the picture of control was clear. He would message her exact location and ask why she was there. She had become so accustomed to it that she responded like it was routine. But in another thread, there was a man named George. George was a married man from the East Coast. He and Amy had connected online 3 years earlier. Over time, their conversations had become deeply intimate. And on the very day of her death, they had been in constant contact. At 5:07 p.m., George sent her a message. At 5:29 p.m., Amy responded. She was excited. She was making plans to see him again. Remember when Amy went quiet at JR's and started texting someone while Jimmy sat beside her? It was George. Investigators now had a theory. Perhaps Jimmy had caught a glimpse of those messages. Perhaps that was the moment the night turned. Jimmy had left Michigan just days after the incident. He packed up Ashley, their 5 cats, and drove back to Ocala to stay with family. He cooperated with investigators and agreed to a formal interview 1 month after Amy's death, this time with Detective Larry Rothman of the Michigan State Police. During the interview, Jimmy was candid about some things.
It wasn't so inner-focused and self-focused, and maybe I could have seen some things that were going on that maybe could have clued me into what my wife was in so much turmoil that I couldn't even see it. I mean, that's how it feels. Like, I don't even know who I am.
But moments later, when asked to describe himself,
describe yourself. What kind of a person are you?
I would say I'm a type A personality. I like structure, organization, I'm ambitious. Always seeking to improve myself and others around me.
he framed his control over the family as leadership, as care, as holding them to a higher standard. When the topic of infidelity came up, Jimmy admitted he had cheated once. But when asked whether Amy could have done the same,
Any time during your marriage, do you know if she was unfaithful to you?
I don't think that would be possible.
Why is that?
She didn't seem to have the capacity to, talk to people, man. I mean, she was, incredibly introverted.
he underestimated her. Later in the interview, Detective Rothman told him directly Amy had been having a 3-year affair.
What was your knowledge of her affair?
I don't think she had an affair. So I have no idea. I wouldn't think it was possible.
There was a lot of stuff that she had tried to delete there, but, we're talking, telling this other guy she loves him.
I think that you're bullshit.
I'm not. I'm not going to lie to you today, and I haven't. So
I'll just tell you right now, I don't believe it.
And then the chats lead up to the 14th, the same day that this happened. Clearly there was something going on between these two people.
Can you pull phone records to see if there's any numbers that I could see that I don't recognize? And that's, to me, is crushing to think that she even has some, I legitimately, I still don't all the way believe you guys. I'm sorry. I don't think that she has the capacity to do that.
Months later, the medical examiner released Amy's autopsy report. Cause of death: strangulation, asphyxiation. Manner of death: undetermined, pending further investigation. Detective Rothman went back to the body cam footage from the night of the incident. He paused on the moment Officer Horn noticed the basement ceiling, and he reached out to a forensic engineering laboratory in Michigan. Their task: recreate the scenario Jimmy had described. Could that extension cord, anchored to that ceiling, have suspended a 140-pound woman? After months of testing, they had their answer. Under those conditions, Amy's feet would have remained on the ground. She could not have been fully suspended. A forensic pathologist reviewed the results and reached a conclusion. The manner of death was homicide. On October 16, 2020, 2 years after Amy's death, Jimmy Allan was charged with 1 felony count of open murder. By then, he was living with his parents in Florida. He had a new fiancée. Their wedding was 5 days away. He was arrested and extradited to Michigan before it took place. When officers explained the charges to him at the station, Jimmy said something that stuck.
If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of us, or they can contact us. Okay?
Just how you sleep at night.
The prosecution built their case around several pillars. The forensic evidence. The extension cord could not have done what Jimmy said it did. The absence of injuries consistent with a suicide hanging. Jimmy's documented pattern of coercive control over Amy. And testimony from Caleb.
I was choked from behind on the floor for multiple seconds. It felt like forever during the incident, and I was gasping for air, grabbing for anything, trying to get away from him.
Caleb was describing an incident from when he still lived at home. Jimmy had choked him during a confrontation. If he was willing to do it to a teenager, the prosecution asked the jury to consider what he was capable of with Amy. The defense pushed back. They argued there was no direct physical evidence tying Jimmy to the act. No scratches on his arms, no defensive wounds. They presented their own forensic expert, who said the physical findings did not conclusively rule out suicide. And they called Ashley to testify on her father's behalf. The same Ashley who, the morning after the incident, said her parents had no history of conflict, now, 3 years later, described a mother with a drinking problem who became a different person when she drank.
Did you notice anything from your vantage point that was a problem that you behaviors or issues that you saw when your mom was drinking alcohol?
2 things, yes. My mother overindulged in alcohol frequently, and she became intoxicated very easily and frequently as well, which would cause her to be not herself at all. She would be meaner and more violent.
Amy's blood alcohol content at the hospital was recorded at 0.09%. Likely the result of the 2 or 3 drinks she'd had that night. The defense pointed to this as evidence of instability. The prosecution called it a normal evening out. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with their verdict.
You do say upon your oaths that you find the defendant guilty of the lesser offense of second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder. Not first-degree, not manslaughter. Second-degree murder in Michigan means the jury believed Jimmy killed Amy intentionally, but stopped short of finding it premeditated. A crime of rage, possibly triggered by what he found on her phone that night. On October 21, 2021, Jimmy Allan was sentenced to 20 to 45 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. He is currently housed at the St. Louis Correctional Facility. He will not be eligible for parole until 2040. At the start of this video, I asked you to drop your first instinct in the comments. Now that you've heard everything, I want to know if you changed your mind. The jury landed on second-degree murder. But a lot of people who followed this case closely felt it should have been first degree. Here's the question worth sitting with. If Jimmy discovered Amy's affair during that argument at the bar, does that change how you see what happened in that basement? And one more thing. The defense made a point that never fully went away. There were no scratches on Jimmy's arms, no defensive wounds anywhere on his body. If Amy was fighting for her life, why didn't she leave a mark? If this case stayed with you, subscribe and hit the bell.